This moment unfolded when my relative and I found ourselves alone in the room. All of this happened 3 months ago during my summer vacation. Sometimes I find it hard to accept. My Uncle James, who is 35 years old, a man in full bloom, attractive. He extended an invitation to his apartment during my summer vacation. I recall him from my childhood years. However, it had been about 5 years since we last met, and I considered it a sensible idea, as I was confined at home. If only I knew where I was headed. He is 35 years old. However, to be honest, you wouldn't imagine it. Charismatic. In a truly exceptional way. As you can see, he takes care of himself simply by looking at him. The skin that wraps him. His hair. Always ready. And man, the way he resonates. This is a blend of fresh cologne and a touch of naturalness for him. Whenever we meet in each other's company, it's as if that cologne is in a deep slumber. And I promise you, it drives me a bit crazy. Therefore, in any case, he extended an invitation to his home for a well-deserved summer break. Just the two of us. Your home is exactly what you yearn for. Elegant, without sacrificing comfort. In this kind of environment, where the effort seems to be solely his, I began to experience a mix of excitement and nervousness. I didn't understand the reason behind it. Therefore, we arrived at his place. The first thing he did was offer me a cold beer. The iconic gesture of James, serene and thoughtful. He handed it to me with that carefree smile of his. The kind that envelopes you in the feeling of being the only soul present in the space. Then he said, "I'll change these clothes. Make yourself at home." I shouted alone, struggling to play it cool. However, inside, my heart was pounding. I have no idea why. I've known him for a while. However, there was something about being in his presence that changed the perception of everything. Deeper. I settled with my beer, searching for a way to distract myself as I entered the room. It was subtle, but with a touch of elegance. The walls were a deep wood tone. A pair of thin photographs rested on the table. The walls were a deep wood tone. Everything exuded a subtle scent of his essence. However, later I heard his footsteps echoing under the living room. And without the slightest hesitation, I followed him attentively. I have no words to describe it. It was as if an invisible force ripped me from that corner and guided me towards the living room. His bedroom door was ajar. And, indeed, I was aware that I shouldn't have peeked. However, I did. And I promise it was the most fascinating thing I have ever witnessed in my existence. He was there, returning to the entrance, taking off his shirt. The way his muscles slid under his skin. It was like watching a scene from a movie. His back stretched wide, intense. You could see each defined line that ran down his back and arms. His skin had a deep, dark tone. Elegant. And I could see how his back muscles were shaping as he slid the shirt over his head. Then he took off his pants. I wasn't ready to face such a situation. His feet displayed notable toning. Powerful. As if he could run a marathon or lift a car. And then there was his firm behind. Strength. The kind of shape that makes your mouth feel dry. I set myself up to comb my book. And this warmth spread throughout my being. Descending more and more. Like a flame gently burning. My heart was expanding in my chest. And I found myself needing to remind myself to breathe. I didn't want to remain captive to the observation. So, I decided to make my way to the exit. However, I stood still. He was heading towards the place. Simply drinking while I watched him. I was aware that his presence in that place was a mistake. I shouldn't be looking at him that way. However, every fragment of my being was captivated by him. A feeling rose in my chest. This fusion of unease and longing. My hands burned with intensity. My lips spread. Finally, he finished his transformation. And that brought me back to reality. I turned around and almost exited the room again, struggling to seem nonchalant. I settled in that place, enjoying my beer, trying to calm my heartbeat. I kept recreating the image in my mind, despite his presence. Completely safe, totally unaware of the impact he had on my being. It was the most intense experience I had ever lived. I had no clue what was to come. I was trying to maintain serenity when she returned to the room. Fresh in a white t-shirt and those dark cuts. Uncomplicated. However, damn. He made it feel like I was part of the cover of a magazine. His hair still held a hint of darkness. And that scent of his captivated me once again. Stronger than ever, renewed. Ready. With a feeling of something I couldn't entirely express, but I knew it would stay in my memory forever. He slumped in the chair beside me, his body so close that I could feel the warmth radiating from him. He took his beer to his lips and took a long sip. Then he raised his gaze, leaving it so subtle. A smile full of satisfaction. Wow, what a week this has been, he whispered, halfway to himself. Work has been crazy. I feel drained. He looked at me with a slight tired smile. I think it's time for a break. I hope it's extraordinary. Tears flowed, struggling to hold my voice with determination. Definitely. You've earned it. He closed his eyes and rose again to the chair. A sound broke accidentally as he rested. His legs unfolded. And so effortlessly. The confident attitude displayed by certain young people. I tried to focus on the beer I held in my hand. However, my eyes kept sliding towards him, attracted by the way his t-shirt clung to his torso. The way his chest began to free itself. There was a palpable authenticity. It's so unusual to see him this way. Naive. Exposed. I have no idea what happened. Maybe it was the beer. Maybe it was the weeks of increasing tension. All the emotions I experienced but never spoke. Whatever it was. I stood up. I settled with my beer. I settled into the seat. I walked toward him with a determined step. My heart tightened with unusual force. I felt it in my throat. He didn't open his eyes as I approached. And for a brief moment, I almost felt the boredom take over me. However, later, without deep reflection on it, I slid behind the couch and placed my hands on his back. He stiffened for a moment. Then he allowed himself to relax. He let out a new sigh. Damn, he whispered. His voice was deep and forceful. That feels nice. I began to require his support. I felt the tension in the muscles under my hands. His skin radiated warmth. His back was wide and sturdy. I felt how the stress faded under my touch. His breath grew faster. His body tore. My hands found their way to the base of his neck. I'll return soon, untangling the knots. I'm not sure how long I was doing this. However, I could feel him sinking further into the couch, his head slightly tilted. I slid my hands toward the back of his neck. Then, I let my fingers glide through his hair, allowing them to descend gently to the base of his back. He made a deep sound, almost a cry, and I promise it came straight from the depths of my being. My body was on the edge of everything. My skin felt as though it were burning. I inscribed myself. My heart raced, and I sealed my lips with his, elegant, agile, just to explore the possibilities. He didn't launch it. He didn't even allow himself to open his eyes. Then I kissed him again, this time on the curve of his neck. My lips gently landed on his back at that moment. Elegant and cozy. I moved towards his eye, pressing a kiss just below it. Then he directed his attention to his neck. His skin burned under the brush of my lips, and I could feel the pulse resonating in that place. He was on fire. Every fiber of my being vibrated intensely, waiting for his response. I wasn't sure if he was going to push me away. I would laugh. Oh, if only he told me to stop. However, at a certain point, he stood up. His hand gently descended over my hair.